Alright, so let's talk about what's happening right now. Because if you have been scrolling the news or Twitter or X or whatever you call it, you'll see two things happening at the same time. First, the Middle East is literally on fire, and second, India's political ecosystem is having a complete meltdown about Modi's foreign policy. And honestly, the reactions are fascinating because the debate isn't about just Iran or Israel anymore. It's about what India's foreign policy should even look like in 2026. Old school ideology or pure national interest. So let's break this down properly, calmly. So, first, the situation. The Israel Iran conflict is in its 10th day as of shooting this video. And if you thought this was going to calm down quickly, yeah, that's not happening right now. In fact, things are escalating. Iran's Revolutionary Guard has now endorsed Mojtaba Khomeini as their new supreme leader, which is a big deal in a way because whenever power consolidates during a war, that usually means the country is preparing for a longer fight, not peace. Then you had fresh missile strikes overnight. Iran fired missiles at Tel Aviv and Petah Tikva. 6 civilians injured, resident areas hit. Now, yes, Israel's Iron Dome intercepted most of them, but still, imagine living somewhere where sirens go off every few hours because missiles are coming. That's the reality right now. And it's not just military targets anymore. Now, the war is moving into energy infrastructure. Israel has hit Iran's oil facilities and refineries, which is in a way huge because oil. Now let's talk about oil because oil is basically Iran's economic lifeline. So Iran responded with something even more worrying. They basically said this: if you hit our energy infrastructure, we will start an energy war. Meaning the Strait of Hormuz becomes the most dangerous place on earth again. Almost 20% of the global oil flows through this route. So yeah, if that closes, the entire global economy feels it. And we are already seeing it. Oil prices are now around $120 a barrel. That's 16% up since this escalation began, which means inflation, fuel prices, shipping costs, everything. This is the kind of war that hits directly your wallet, even if you are thousands of kilometers away. Now, here's where India enters the story because India has a very interesting position here. We have ties with Israel, we have ties with Iran. We have millions of Indians working in the Gulf, and a huge chunk of our energy imports depend on this region. So, yeah, India right now is doing something very simple. It's trying to balance everything. The government condemned the Iranian missile strikes on Gulf allies, but it didn't loudly condemn the US-Israel strikes on Iran. And as expected, this has triggered a full political debate in India. The opposition's argument is basically this. They're saying India has lost its moral voice. Congress leaders and others are saying India has betrayed Iran. They are saying India's Vishwaguru image is shrinking. Some of them are saying the government is being pro-Israel because of the Prime Minister's recent Israel visit. Others are linking the war to gas cylinder price hikes. And the left. Yes, how can we forget the left? The left, like parties like CPM, is saying that India should lead the global south against what they call US-Israel aggression. So their argument is basically India should condemn the strikes, stand up morally, and lead the developing world. Now, don't get me wrong, this sounds nice. Mark my words, this sounds nice. But here's where the things get interesting. Because here's the most uncomfortable question which most of the people are ignoring. Now, hear me out clearly. Why exactly should India pick a side in this war? I mean, seriously, think about it. This is Iran versus Israel with the US involved, possibly Russia may get involved, and maybe even China. This is a geopolitical minefield, and somehow people in India think the smartest move for Delhi is to jump into it emotionally. Now, let me be honest, that's not foreign policy, that's actually Twitter activism. Now, let's talk about what the government is actually doing. The government's position is actually very simple into this. Three priorities: peace, Indian citizens, and national interest. That's it. External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar said this in the parliament. Because India has 8 to 10 million citizens living in the Middle East, if things spiral out of control, these people are the first ones to get affected. Then there's energy security, there's trade routes, there's the Chabahar port in Iran. So basically, the government is saying we are not here to win ideological arguments. We are here to protect India's interests. And honestly, that actually sounds like what a foreign policy for a country like India should sound like. Now, the thing some people are forgetting is this: India is no longer stuck in the non-aligned mindset. Back then, the idea was to secure ideological neutrality. Now, the idea is strategic autonomy. Now, wait, let me explain this. Meaning, India will do whatever benefits India, not Iran, not Israel, not America. It's basically, in the most simple terms I can say, it's just India first. Okay, now then there's this another weird conspiracy I came across on my Twitter and Instagram feed, which is some people were claiming that PM Modi's Israel visit triggered the strikes, which is honestly wild, because reports later showed the strikes were being planned weeks earlier. But in India, in our political scenario, once something becomes a political narrative, facts don't always matter anymore. Now then there's this another strange conspiracy floating around that somehow India is connected to one of the incidents in this war. An Iranian ship called IRIS Dana was sunk by a US submarine near Sri Lanka. And people started linking India because that same ship had participated in exercise Milan 2026 in Visakhapatnam just days earlier. But that's where the story ends. Okay, now for those of you who don't know what this Milan exercise is, so Milan is a multinational naval exercise. Dozens of countries participate in it. They train together, they do the ceremonies, and then they just leave on their way. Once a foreign warship sails out of port, India has zero responsibility for what happens to it later in the open ocean or the international waters. The attack didn't happen in Indian waters. It didn't happen under India's jurisdiction. So let me ask a simple question. If this is a war between Israel and Iran and the ship was sunk by the United States in international waters beyond India's jurisdiction, then how exactly is India responsible here? That narrative just doesn't make any sense. Now, here's the bigger picture most people miss. This conflict could become a global economic shock. Now, look what's happening with the Strait of Hormuz. Technically, it isn't officially closed. There's no official blockade as of now. But in reality, commercial traffic through the strait has reduced by almost 90%. Before the war, around 150 ships passed through it every single day, carrying around 20% of the world's oil. Now, only a handful of vessels are attempting the transit, while hundreds of tankers are waiting outside because of drone and missile attacks and the threat of retaliation. So, even if it's not closed on paper, it's effectively frozen for global shipping. And if the situation escalates further, if Iran starts directly targeting the oil routes, or if the Strait of Hormuz shuts down completely, we are then not talking about just the Middle East anymore. We are talking about global inflation, energy crisis, supply chains collapsing. So the idea that India should jump into shouting ideological slogans is honestly pretty reckless and stupid in a way. Okay, look, foreign policy isn't about sounding impressive on Instagram reels. It's about keeping your country safe and stable. And that sometimes means doing something very boring, staying calm, staying quiet, and protecting your interests. And if you look at the recent past examples, India's silence has actually worked in its favor more often than people realize. Take the Russia-Ukraine war. Most countries rushed to take moral positions. India mostly stayed quiet, abstained in the UN votes, avoided publicly condemning Russia. And what happened? India secured discounted Russian oil, saved billions in energy costs, kept its defense supplies flowing, and still maintained relations with the West. Then look at the Israel-Gaza conflict. India again avoided dramatic statements, no aggressive condemnations, several abstentions in UN votes, and because of that, India managed to strengthen defense and tech ties with Israel while still maintaining good relations with Gulf countries, where millions of Indians live and work. Even with the Trump's tariff tensions which happened last year, India didn't go into public shouting match. It stayed relatively quiet, negotiated, and eventually secured a trade deal with the United States. So sometimes silence is strategy while everyone else is shouting. Look, I am not an expert on geopolitics, but as far as I have studied geopolitics over the past couple of years, I have understood one thing very clearly, that the loudest country in the room is rarely the smartest one. The smartest one is usually the one watching quietly, calculating, waiting for the right move. And right now, that's exactly what India seems to be doing. Thanks for watching. Make sure you like, share, or subscribe. Do let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. And I'll catch you in the next one. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat, Vande Mataram.